The harmattan winds swept through Lagos that December evening, carrying with it the smell of suya and exhaust fumes from the bustling Acacia streets. Inside the Babatunde family compound, Grace Aduk clutched her swollen belly, her face twisted in pain as another contraction ripped through her body. Michael! Michael, the baby is coming, she gasped, reaching for her husband who sat across the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, laughing at something the person on the other end had said. He waved her off dismissively. Grace, you're only 8 months. Stop being dramatic. The doctor said you have 4 more weeks. Something is wrong. Grace's voice cracked with desperation. Please, I need to go to the hospital now. Mama Bio Dunn, Michael's mother, sucked her teeth loudly from her chair, her Ankara wrapper rustling as she shifted her considerable weight. This girl and her Warola. Always seeking attention. In my time, we women gave birth in the farm and continued working. No hospital, no noise. Papa Olyamide, Michael's father, said nothing. He never did. He simply read his newspaper and pretended not to hear his wife's cruelty. The front door opened, and the sweet scent of expensive perfume announced Stella Omalara's arrival before she even stepped into view. She strutted in wearing a body-hugging red dress, her Brazilian weave cascading down her shoulders, her designer handbag swinging from her manicured fingers. Michael, baby, she cooed, completely ignoring Grace's presence. I've been waiting for your call. Are we still going to that restaurant in Victoria Island tonight? Grace's heart shattered into a million pieces, as it did every time Stella waltzed into her home, into her marriage, with the full blessing of her in-laws. 6 months ago, she had discovered Michael's affair. 6 months of begging, crying, and praying for him to end it. Instead, he had grown bolder, more brazen. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. Grace doubled over, and warm liquid gushed down her legs, pooling on the Italian tiles Michael had installed with money from their joint account. Money Grace had saved from her nursing salary while he squandered his earnings. My water just broke, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please, somebody help me. Stella laughed, a cruel tinkling sound. See this woman, oh. Even now, she's trying to manipulate you, Michael. Can't you see? She just wants to ruin our evening. Mama Papa, please. Grace turned to her in-laws, desperation clawing at her throat. I need to get to the hospital. The baby. Which baby? Mama Bio Dunn sneered. Are you even sure it's my son's child? A woman who cannot keep her husband satisfied, who knows what else she's been doing outside. The words struck Grace like physical blows. She had been nothing but faithful, nothing but devoted. She had worked double shifts at the hospital to help Michael start his business. She had endured his mother's insults, his father's silence, his public humiliation with Stella. And now, as she faced the most dangerous moment of her life, they treated her like garbage. I'll call an Uber, Grace fumbled for her phone with shaking hands. The contractions were coming faster now, 2 minutes apart. Something was terribly wrong. As a nurse, she knew the signs. The baby was in distress. Michael finally stood up, but not to help his wife. He walked over to Stella, wrapped his arm around her waist, and kissed her temple. Let's just go, baby. She's fine. You know how Grace exaggerates everything. Michael Babatunde. Grace screamed, pain and betrayal ripping the words from her soul. I am your wife. I am carrying your child. How can you be so heartless? He turned to look at her then, and the coldness in his eyes made her blood freeze. You were convenient, Grace. That's all you ever were. You helped me when I had nothing, and I married you because it was expected. But you've always been beneath me. Stella is the kind of woman I deserve. Grace collapsed to her knees, not from the physical pain of labor but from the devastating realization that the man she loved, the man she had sacrificed everything for, had never loved her at all. Mama Bio Dunn stood up, her voice dripping with satisfaction. You hear that? Even my son is tired of you. When you finally give birth to whatever that thing in your belly is, you will pack your things and leave this house. We have already found a proper wife for Michael. Through her tears and agony, Grace saw Stella's smirk of triumph. She saw Papa Olyamide turn the page of his newspaper, unmoved. She saw Michael checking his watch, impatient to leave. "Fine," she whispered, her voice broken but determined. "I'll go by myself." She crawled to the door, using furniture to pull herself up. Each movement was torture, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her completely defeated. Her phone rang. It was Blessing Taiwo, her colleague and best friend from the hospital. "Grace, where are you? Your shift started an hour ago." "Blessing," Grace gasped. "I need help. I'm in labor. They won't help me. Nobody will help me. I'm coming now. Stay there." Grace made it to the veranda when the most intense pain yet seized her body. She screamed, a primal sound that echoed through the compound. Neighbors peeked through their windows but didn't intervene. The Babatundes were wealthy, influential. Nobody wanted their trouble. Blessing's car screeched to a halt in front of the house 20 minutes later. She found Grace lying on the cold concrete, barely conscious, bleeding heavily. "Jesus Christ. Grace!" Blessing screamed, lifting her friend. "What kind of animals are these people?" Michael appeared at the door, his expression annoyed. "Tell your friend to stop disturbing the neighborhood with all that noise." Blessing's eyes blazed with fury. "You will answer to God for this wickedness, Michael Babatunde. Mark my words." As Blessing rushed Grace to the hospital, Grace's vision began to fade. The last thing she saw was Stella and Michael, arm in arm, laughing as they walked to his Mercedes. "My baby," she whispered to Blessing. "Save my baby." "I'll save you both," Blessing promised, pressing harder on the accelerator. But Grace knew. Somehow, deep in her soul, she knew she wouldn't survive this night. And as darkness closed in around her, her only prayer was for her child, that somehow, someway, her baby would be okay. St. Nicholas Hospital's fluorescent lights hummed in the stillness of the night. Dr. Folake Iamide emerged from the delivery room, her scrubs stained with blood, her expression grave. Blessing jumped to her feet from the waiting area, her heart pounding. "Doctor." "Grace." "The baby." Dr. Folake's eyes were wells of sadness. "I'm so sorry, Blessing. We did everything we could." Grace lost too much blood. She had placental abruption, the placenta separated from the uterine wall. "By the time you brought her in." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. She fought so hard. Even as she was fading, she kept asking about her baby. She was an incredibly brave woman. Blessing collapsed into a chair, sobs racking her body. "No, no, no. Not Grace. She was good. She was so good. How can God let this happen?" "We need to contact her family," Dr. Folake said gently. "Do you have their numbers?" "Her family is in Ibadan. I'll call them." Blessing wiped her tears, her hands shaking as she scrolled through her phone. Then she paused, her jaw clenching. "Should I call that demon she married?" Dr. Folake's expression hardened. "He's still her legal husband. We're required to inform him." Blessing made the call, each ring filling her with more rage. Michael answered on the fifth ring, music and laughter loud in the background. "What is it, Blessing? We're kind of busy here." "Grace is dead." Blessing spat the words like poison. "Your wife died giving birth because you and your wicked family refused to help her." There was a pause. Then, incredibly, Michael said, "Okay. Thanks for letting me know. We'll come to the hospital tomorrow to handle the paperwork." He hung up. Blessing stared at her phone in disbelief. Dr. Folake, who had overheard, shook her head in disgust. "What kind of man?" "A demon," Blessing finished. "That's what kind." The next morning, the hospital corridor became a stage for one of the most disturbing displays Dr. Folake had witnessed in her 15 years of practice. Michael arrived, not in morning clothes, but in an expensive agbada, smelling of cologne and arrogance. Behind him walked Stella, dripping in gold jewelry, her face carefully arranged in a mask of fake sympathy. Mama Bio-Dun and Papa Olyamide completed the delegation, both looking more annoyed than grieved. "Where is the body?" Mama Bio-Dun demanded without preamble. "We need to arrange for quick burial. No need for all that long funeral walla." Dr. Folake bristled. "Mrs. Babatunde, your daughter-in-law just died. Might I suggest a moment of respect?" "Daughter-in-law KO, daughter-in-law NI," Mama Bio-Dun hissed. "That girl was never good enough for my son. Now we can move forward with our lives." Stella actually smiled, then quickly suppressed it when she noticed the doctor watching. She moved closer to Michael, possessively wrapping her arm through his. "Michael, darling, we should discuss the wedding date. I was thinking March would be lovely. After a respectful mourning period, of course." She added the last part with practiced insincerity. "What about the baby?" Dr. Folake asked, her voice cold. "Aren't you going to ask about your child, Mr. Babatunde?" Michael shrugged, examining his manicured nails. "What's there to ask? If it survived, it survived. If not..." He trailed off, the implication clear. Papa Olyamide finally spoke, his first words since arriving. "Doctor, what happened to the child? We need to know for inheritance purposes." The mercenary question hung in the air like a foul odor. These people weren't even pretending to care about Grace or her baby. They were already calculating assets, planning their next moves. "The baby is in the NICU," Dr. Folake said carefully, studying their reactions. "Boy or girl?" Mama Bio-Dun asked, her tone suggesting one answer would be preferable to the other. Before Dr. Folake could answer, Stella interjected with shocking casualness. "Honestly, I hope it's a girl. Boys inherit property, and that could complicate things for us later." She looked up at Michael with doe eyes. "We'll have our own children, won't we, baby? Strong, beautiful children from proper stock." Michael nodded, kissing her forehead. "Of course. Maybe 3 or 4. Blessing, who had been standing nearby in stunned silence, finally exploded. "You people are evil. Grace died because of you. That baby is your child, Michael. Your flesh and blood." "Watch your mouth," Mama Bio-Dun snapped. "You're just a common nurse. You don't know anything about family matters." "I know enough to recognize demons when I see them," Blessing shot back. Dr. Folake placed a restraining hand on Blessing's arm. "Perhaps we should discuss this in my office. This is a hospital, and there are other patients who need quiet." They moved to the administrative wing, and that's when Dr. Folake overheard the conversation that made her blood boil. As they waited in the hallway outside her office, the Babatunde family and Stella stood in a cluster, speaking in hushed but not hushed enough tones. "So the house in Lekki," Stella was saying, "that was in both their names, right?" Michael nodded. "Joint ownership. But with her dead, it reverts to me automatically." "And her family?" Papa Olyamide asked. "They won't cause trouble." "Grace's parents died years ago," Michael said dismissively. "She has a sister in Ibadan, but we've never been close. I doubt she'll even come for the funeral." Mama Bio-Dun cackled. "God has finally answered our prayers. That albatross around your neck is gone. Now you can marry properly, have children with good bloodline." "What about this baby in the NICU?" Stella asked, a worried edge to her voice. "If it's a boy, and it lives, won't that complicate things?" Michael waved his hand dismissively. "These premature babies, they don't always make it. And even if this one does, we'll figure something out. Maybe send it to live with her village people in Ibadan." "Perfect," Stella purred. "Out of sight, out of mind. Then we can start fresh." They were actually celebrating. A woman had died just hours ago, a woman who had loved Michael with her whole heart, who had supported him, worked for him, endured abuse for him, and these vultures were celebrating her death and planning to dispose of her child like unwanted furniture. Dr. Folake felt rage building in her chest like a living thing. She was about to march out there and tell them exactly what she thought of them when another doctor rushed up to her. "Dr. Folake, we need you in the NICU immediately. There's been a development with the Babatunde babies." Babies. Plural. Dr. Folake's eyes widened as understanding dawned. She looked back at the celebrating family, then at the young doctor, and a slow, righteous smile spread across her face. "Oh, I have news for them all right," she murmured. "News that's going to shatter their little celebration." She straightened her white coat, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the family with the bearing of someone carrying divine justice. "Mr. and Mrs. Babatunde, Miss Omalora," she said formally, her voice cutting through their laughter like a scalpel. "I need to speak with you about your wife's delivery, Mr. Babatunde." "Make it quick, doctor," Michael said impatiently. "We have funeral arrangements to make. Small, simple, affordable. No need for unnecessary expenses." Dr. Folake looked each of them in the eye, savoring the moment. "I'm afraid you'll need to revise those plans," she said, her voice ringing with satisfaction. "You see, there's been a development you should know about." "What development?" Stella asked nervously. Dr. Folake paused, letting the tension build, watching their smug faces. Then she delivered the news that would change everything. "Your wife didn't deliver one baby, Mr. Babatunde." She paused, watching their expressions shift from confusion to concern. "She delivered twins." The silence that followed was deafening. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. For 5 full seconds, nobody moved, nobody spoke, nobody even seemed to breathe. Then, as if a spell had been broken, they all erupted at once. "Twins." Michael's face had gone from brown to ashen gray. "What do you mean, twins?" "I mean," Dr. Folake said, her voice dripping with clinical precision and barely concealed satisfaction, "that your late wife gave birth to 2 babies. Twin girls. Born at 12:47 and 12:51 a.m. respectively. Both are currently in the neonatal intensive care unit, and both are alive." Stella's hand flew to her mouth, but not in joy, in horror. "No. No, no, no. This can't be happening." Mama Biodun swayed on her feet, grabbing onto Papa Olyamide for support. Two children. How is this possible? The scan only showed 1 baby. Sometimes with the position of the babies and the timing of scans, a twin can hide behind the other, Dr. Folake explained, though her tone suggested she was taking immense pleasure in their distress. "It's rare but not unheard of. Your daughter-in-law was carrying twins throughout her pregnancy, working double shifts, enduring stress and neglect, all while growing 2 human beings inside her." The accusation in her words was unmistakable. Michael stumbled backward, his hand gripping his head. This changes everything." "It certainly does," Blessing said, emerging from where she'd been standing. Her tears had dried, replaced by a fierce, protective anger. 2 babies. 2 witnesses to your wickedness. 2 living testimonies of Grace's love and sacrifice. "Shut up," Stella shrieked, her carefully crafted composure crumbling. "You're just a nurse. You don't get to talk to us like that." "But I do," Dr. Folake interjected coldly. "As the attending physician, I have authority here. And let me be very clear, those babies are under hospital protection now. You will not see them, touch them, or make any decisions about them until proper legal procedures are followed." "They're my children," Michael protested, though his voice lacked conviction. "I have rights. Rights you forfeited when you let their mother bleed out while you were wine and dining your mistress." Dr. Folake's professional mask cracked, revealing her fury. "I heard everything. Your celebration, your plans, your disgusting scheming about property and inheritance while that woman's body was still warm." Papa Olyamide finally found his voice, though it trembled. "Doctor, you must understand, this is a family matter." "A family matter?" Blessing laughed bitterly. Grace had no family in you people. But she does have a sister. Comfort Aidbimp. And I've already called her. She's driving down from Ibadan as we speak. Michael's eyes widened in panic. Comfort. No. She can't. We don't need to involve her. Too late, Blessing said with grim satisfaction. She knows everything. How you treated Grace, how you flaunted your mistress, how you all left her to die. And now she knows about the twins. Stella grabbed Michael's arm, her manicured nails digging into his expensive agbada. Michael, do something. This is getting out of hand. What can he do? Dr. Folake asked rhetorically. The babies are alive. They're his legal children. And unlike their mother, they have advocates who won't let them be abused or discarded. Mama Biodun tried to regain control, drawing herself up to her full height. This is nonsense. We are the Babatunde family. We have connections, we have money, we have... You have nothing I respect, Dr. Folake cut her off. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual parents to attend to. Parents who actually care about their children. As she turned to leave, Michael called out desperately. Wait! The babies, are they healthy? Will they survive? Dr. Folake paused, looking back at him with contempt. Now you ask. Now that you realize they're real, that they're complications to your plans, suddenly you care. She shook her head. They're premature but fighting. Strong, just like their mother. They weigh 2.1 and 1.9 kilograms respectively. They need intensive care, monitoring, probably a month in the NICU. The cost will be substantial. She watched Michael's face pale further at the mention of cost. Of course, she added acidly. I'm sure you can afford it. After all, you have money for expensive restaurants and designer handbags for your mistress. Surely you can spare some for your daughter's survival. Stella's grip on Michael's arm tightened. Michael, we can't. This is too much. The cost, the responsibility. I didn't sign up for this. Didn't sign up for this? Blessing repeated incredulously. You signed up to destroy a marriage, to take another woman's husband, to parade yourself in her home while she suffered. But you didn't sign up for the consequences? The audacity. Enough. Papa Olyamide finally roared. This is a private family matter. Not anymore, a new voice said from the end of the corridor. Everyone turned to see a woman striding toward them, her Ankara dress billowing behind her, her head tie wrapped high and proud. She was older than Grace but shared her delicate features, her warm brown eyes, though now those eyes blazed with fury. Comfort, Michael breathed. Comfort Aidbimp stopped before them, her gaze moving from face to face, lingering longest on Stella. So you're the Ashuwo who destroyed my sister's marriage. She didn't wait for a response. And you, she turned to Mama Biodun, you're the wicked mother-in-law who made Grace's life a living hell. How dare you? Mama Biodun started. How dare I? Comfort's voice rose. How dare you? My sister called me 3 days ago, crying, telling me about the abuse, the infidelity, the cruelty. She said she was documenting everything, that she was finally ready to leave. And now she's dead. Dead because you people treated her worse than a dog. Michael stepped forward. Comfort, please. Let's discuss this calmly. Calmly. Comfort laughed harshly. My sister is dead, Michael. And you want calm? Where was your calm when she needed you? Where was your love, your protection, your basic human decency? The babies, Dr. Folake interjected gently. Would you like to see your nieces? Comfort's fierce expression crumbled, tears streaming down her face. Yes, please. They're all I have left of Grace. As Dr. Folake led Comfort away, Blessing following close behind, the Babatunde family and Stella stood in the corridor like statues, their celebration turned to ashes, their plans in ruins. This is a disaster, Stella whispered. We need a lawyer, Papa Olyamide said grimly. We need to protect our interests. Your interests? Michael echoed hollowly. He sank into a nearby chair, his head in his hands. For the first time since Grace's death, something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. What have we done? But Mama Bio Dunn was already on her phone, calling their family lawyer. Stella was pacing, muttering about how this wasn't what she wanted. Papa Olyamide was calculating costs and consequences. None of them were thinking about Grace. None of them were mourning her. Even now, in the face of divine irony, they were only concerned with themselves. In the NICU, Comfort stood before the two incubators, her hands pressed against the glass. Inside, two tiny babies slept, their little chests rising and falling with mechanical assistance, their perfect brown skin glowing under the warming lights. They look just like her, Comfort whispered through her tears. They have Grace's nose, her eyebrows. Oh, my sister, you left us two beautiful angels. Dr. Folake stood beside her. She fought so hard for them. Even when she was dying, she kept asking if they were okay. A mother's love. What are their chances? Comfort asked, not taking her eyes off her nieces. Good. Very good, actually. They're fighters, like I said. With proper care, they should be able to go home in 4 to 6 weeks. Home, Comfort repeated bitterly. Where is home for them now? With that monster and his family. Blessing stepped forward, her voice low and intense. Comfort, there's something you should know. Grace wasn't just documenting the abuse. She was preparing to leave Michael. She kept records, recordings, everything. Comfort turned sharply. What kind of records? Blessing pulled out her phone. She sent them to me for safekeeping. Voice recordings of Michael and his mother insulting her. Photos of injuries from when Mama Bio Dunn pushed her. Bank statements showing Michael draining their joint account for Stella. Text messages between Michael and Stella, including ones where they discussed getting rid of Grace. Dr. Folake's eyes widened. That's evidence, Comfort finished, her voice hardening with determination. That's evidence. Evidence that can protect these babies from those monsters. She looked at the twins with fierce protectiveness. Michael Babatunde wants a fight? He's going to get one. But he won't win. I promise you that, Grace. Your babies will know love, safety, and justice. This I swear. In the corridor outside, Michael sat alone, his family gone to make their plans, Stella gone to salvage her reputation. And for the first time, he allowed himself to remember Grace as she had been when they first met. Young, hopeful, full of love and dreams. But the memory brought no comfort, only the bitter taste of regret that he was too proud, too selfish, to acknowledge aloud. The battle for the twins had only just begun. The law office of Adeniran and Associates sat on the busy streets of Victoria Island, Lagos, its glass facade reflecting the chaos of the city below. Inside the conference room, two opposing forces prepared for war. On one side sat Michael Babatunde, flanked by his parents and their lawyer, Barrister Colonel Adeniran, a man known for winning cases through intimidation and technicalities. Stella had wisely chosen not to attend, sensing the optics would be terrible. On the other side sat Comfort Adebimp, her own lawyer, Barrister Funmaleo Ogunlai, a fierce women's rights advocate, and Blessing, who had taken leave from the hospital to support Grace's sister. Between them lay the future of two tiny babies still fighting for life in the NICU. Let's be reasonable about this, Barrister Adeniran began, his voice oily with false friendliness. My client is the biological father. He has legal rights to his children. Mrs. Adebimp, while we sympathize with your loss, you are merely an aunt. The law is clear on this matter. The law is also clear on child endangerment and negligence, Barrister Ogunlai countered sharply. And we have substantial evidence that my client's sister died because of the direct actions, and inactions, of your client and his family. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Since the shock of the twins' revelation 3 days ago, he had barely slept. The business associates who once envied his beautiful wife now whispered about his treatment of her. His church had called, asking uncomfortable questions. Even Stella had grown distant, her calls less frequent, her affection cooler. Accusations without proof. Adeniran dismissed with a wave. Grief makes people say extreme things. Then let's talk about proof, Comfort said, her voice like steel. She nodded to Blessing, who placed a tablet on the table. This is Grace's iPad, Blessing explained. For the past 6 months, she documented everything. Every insult, every injury, every betrayal. She was building a case to leave Michael and seek full custody of what she thought was one baby. She pressed play on the first recording. Grace's voice, strained but clear, filled the room. Date: July 15th. Today Mama Bio Dunn told me I was worthless, that I trapped a son with pregnancy. Michael just laughed. He said maybe she was right, that he should have married Stella instead. This is the 3rd time this week he's brought Stella to our home. Michael flinched. Papa Olyamide looked away. Mama Biodun's face hardened, but her hand trembled slightly. Blessing played another recording, this one from September. Michael emptied our joint account again. 60,000 naira, gone. That was money for the baby's things, for hospital bills. When I confronted him, he said Stella needed a new phone. He said his mistress deserved nice things more than his wife. Then came the photographs. Grace in the hospital, a bruise on her arm shaped like fingerprints. The medical report from the day Mama Bio Dunn had pushed her during an argument, causing her to fall and hit her head on the coffee table. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. This, Barrister Ogunlai said, playing a video recording, was taken the day Grace went into labor. On the screen, Grace could be seen clutching her belly, clearly in distress. The camera angle suggested she had propped her phone somewhere to record. Michael's voice came through clearly. You were convenient, Grace. That's all you ever were. You've always been beneath me. Stella is the kind of woman I deserve. Mama Biodun's voice followed. When you finally give birth to whatever that thing in your belly is, you will pack your things and leave this house. And then the most chilling part, Grace on the floor, crying, begging for help, while footsteps could be heard walking away. The video ended with Grace crawling toward the door. The conference room fell into heavy silence. Barrister Adeniran cleared his throat, his earlier confidence gone. This is unfortunate, but it doesn't change the legal reality. Those children are Babatunde's. They bear my client's name. Actually, Barrister Ogunlai said with a cold smile, we've already filed a petition to change that. Given the circumstances and the documented abuse, we're requesting the twins be given their mother's maiden name, Aduk, and that full custody be granted to Mrs. Adebimp. That's outrageous. Mama Bio Dunn exploded. Those are my grandchildren. Are they? Comfort asked quietly. Because I haven't seen you visit them once in the past 3 days. Not once have you gone to the NICU to see if they're alive or dead. You know who has been there. Me. Every day, every hour I'm allowed. I hold their tiny hands. I sing to them. I tell them about their mother, about how much she loved them, how hard she fought for them. We've been busy, Papa Olyamide started. Busy planning how to minimize your financial obligation, Blessing cut in. I heard you that first day. You were more concerned about inheritance and property than about 2 innocent babies fighting for their lives. Michael finally spoke, his voice hoarse. I know I failed Grace. I know I was a terrible husband. But those babies, they're mine. I can change. I can be better. Can you? Comfort leaned forward, her eyes boring into his. Where were you last night, Michael, when one of the twins stopped breathing and had to be resuscitated? Where were you when the doctor said they needed a specialized medication that cost 50,000 naira? I paid it. Me. The mere aunt. Where were you? I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. Comfort's voice rose. The hospital called you 4 times yesterday. You didn't answer. You know who finally answered? Stella. And you know what she said? That you were tired of dealing with Grace's issues and to stop calling. The color drained from Michael's face. He hadn't known about that call, hadn't known Stella had answered his phone. But he also couldn't deny that he'd been avoiding the hospital, avoiding the reality of his daughters, avoiding the consequences of his actions. Barrister Ogunlai opened another file. We also have testimonies from Grace's colleagues at the hospital. 15 nurses and doctors willing to testify about the times Michael came to Grace's workplace with Stella, embarrassing her in front of her peers. About the times Grace came to work with injuries she tried to hide. About the stress she was under, which likely contributed to her premature labor and death. She slid a document across the table. This is a petition for emergency custody, signed by a judge this morning. Until a full hearing can be arranged, Mrs. Adbimp has been granted temporary custody of the twins. You, Mr. Babatunde, have supervised visitation rights only 1 hour per day, with a social worker present. This is ridiculous. Barrister Adeniran protested. You can't just take a man's children. Watch us, Barrister Ogunlai said calmly. We have evidence of neglect, abuse by proxy, emotional cruelty, and reckless endangerment. A judge has reviewed this evidence and made his ruling. If you wish to contest it, we welcome you to try. Every piece of evidence will be made public. Every recording, every photograph, every testimony will be heard in open court. Is that what you want, Mr. Babatunde? For all of Lagos to know exactly what kind of man you are. Michael looked at his parents, at his lawyer, then down at his hands. Those hands that had never once held Grace with gentleness in the final months of her life. Those hands that had never fought for her, protected her, or even helped her up when she fell. I loved her once, he whispered. I did love her in the beginning. But not enough, Comfort said softly, and somehow that was more devastating than all her anger. Not nearly enough. And now she's gone, and all that's left are 2 babies who will never know their mother's love because you and your family valued money and status more than a good woman's life. Mama Bio-Dun stood abruptly. Come, we're leaving. We don't have to listen to these insults. But Papa Olyamide remained seated, staring at the still image on the tablet screen. Grace's face, young and hopeful from better days. For the first time, something cracked in his perpetual silence. I should have spoken up, he said quietly. All those times my wife was cruel, all those times Michael brought that girl to our home. I should have said something. I should have protected Grace. Papa. Mama Bio-Dun hissed. No, he said, his voice gaining strength. No more. I have been a coward. I let you bully that girl. I let our son dishonor his marriage. And now she's dead, and I have to live with that shame. He stood, looking at his son with profound disappointment. You're on your own, Michael. I won't help you fight for children you don't deserve. He walked out, leaving Mama Bio-Dun sputtering in outrage. But she too eventually followed, her exit less dignified than her entrance. Michael sat alone with his lawyer, the weight of his choices crushing down on him. What do I do? He asked Adeniran. The lawyer sighed. Honestly, you cooperate. You pay child support. You take the supervised visitation and pray that in a few years, when your daughters are old enough to ask questions, you'll have a good answer for why their mother died alone. And Stella. Adeniran gave him a pitying look. Son, that woman is probably already looking for her next wealthy target. Women like that don't stick around when the money gets tight and the reputation gets damaged. Michael knew it was true. He'd already seen the signs, her increasing distance, her reluctance to be seen with him in public, her sudden interest in other men's social media posts. He had lost everything. And unlike Grace, who had lost her life through no fault of her own, Michael had authored his own destruction. 6 weeks later, the NICU had become a very different place. Where once there had been crisis and uncertainty, now there was hope and healing. The twins, officially named Grace Aginola and Joy Adunk, after their mother and as symbols of the joy Grace had brought to the world, were thriving. They had gained weight, graduated from their incubators to regular cribs, and were feeding well. Their eyes, when open, were bright and alert, taking in the world they'd entered so dramatically. Comfort visited every day, sometimes twice a day. She sang to them, read to them, held them with the fierce love of someone who had lost too much and would protect what remained with her life. Michael came too, during his supervised visitation hours. The first time he saw his daughters, really saw them, not as complications or obstacles but as human beings, he had wept. They were beautiful. They had Grace's nose, her delicate eyebrows, her perfect brown skin. And when Joy wrapped her tiny fingers around his thumb, something in his hardened heart fractured. "I'm sorry," he whispered to them, though they couldn't understand. "I'm so sorry for everything." The social worker, Mrs. Adeyemi, watched carefully but said nothing. She had read the case file, seen the evidence, and formed her own opinions. But she was also trained to look for genuine change, and something in Michael's demeanor suggested that perhaps, beneath the selfishness and cruelty, there might be a seed of regret worth nurturing. The custody hearing was set for 2 weeks after the twins were discharged from the hospital. In the meantime, they would live with Comfort in her comfortable home in Ibadan, where she worked as a schoolteacher and lived alone since her divorce 3 years prior. Grace's funeral had been a grand affair, despite the Babatunde's desire for something small. Comfort had ensured her sister received the honor she deserved. Hundreds of people attended, colleagues from the hospital who spoke of Grace's kindness and skill, neighbors who remembered her generosity, church members who had witnessed her faith, and even some of Michael's business associates who had always liked Grace more than they liked him. Stella did not attend. She had, as predicted, moved on to a real estate developer in Abuja, her Instagram posts showing her draped on his arm at exclusive events. She had blocked Michael's number and refused to answer questions when journalists tried to interview her about Grace's death. Mama Bayo Dunn came to the funeral but stood apart from the mourners, her face hard, unrepentant. She maintained that Grace had been manipulative, that the evidence was fabricated, that her son was the real victim. But no one listened to her anymore. Her women's group at church had distanced themselves from her. Her society friends made excuses not to attend her parties. In Lagos society, where perception was everything, Mama Bayo Dunn had become persona non grata. Papa Olumide, however, had changed. He attended grief counseling, something unheard of for a man of his generation. He visited the twins regularly, though always separately from Michael, and had opened a trust fund for their education, using his own money, not the family's. "I can't bring Grace back," he told Comfort one afternoon at the hospital. "But I can make sure her daughters want for nothing. It's the least I can do." Comfort had accepted his help, though her forgiveness would take longer to earn. The day the twins were discharged, the hospital corridor was filled with well-wishers. Nurses had knitted tiny blankets. Doctors had contributed to a gift basket of baby supplies. Even some patients who had heard the story sent cards and prayers. Dr. Folake Iamide carried baby Grace, while Blessing carried baby Joy. They walked slowly toward where Comfort waited with a double stroller, tears streaming down her face. "Grace would be so proud of them," Dr. Folake said softly, placing the baby in Comfort's arms. "They're fighters, just like their mother. And they'll know about her," Comfort promised, looking down at her niece's perfect face. "Every day, I'll tell them stories about how brilliant their mother was, how kind, how brave. They'll know that Grace Aduk was a hero who fought until her last breath to give them life." Michael stood apart from the celebration, watching through the window. He had wanted to be there, but Comfort had gently but firmly told him to stay away. This was a day for honoring Grace, and his presence would only taint it. He understood. He was learning to understand a lot of things too late. The custody hearing, when it finally came, was mercifully brief. Barrister Ogunlai presented the evidence. The recordings, the photographs, the testimonies, the bank statements showing Michael had drained their accounts while Grace scraped together money for baby supplies. She presented character witnesses who spoke of Grace's love and preparation for motherhood, and of Michael's public humiliation of his wife. Barrister Aidan Iran tried to argue for joint custody, for Michael's rights as a father, for the possibility of rehabilitation. But the evidence was damning, and the judge, a stern woman in her 60s who had seen too many cases like this, was unimpressed. Mr. Babatunde, Judge Olayinka said, removing her glasses to look directly at him, I have reviewed this case thoroughly, and I am appalled. Your wife died because of the hostile environment you and your family created. You neglected her medical emergency to wine and dine your mistress. You drained family resources to support your extramarital affair while your pregnant wife worked double shifts to support you. You subjected her to emotional and psychological abuse that has been well documented. She paused, letting her words sink in. However, I am not here to punish you, Mr. Babatunde. I am here to do what is best for Grace Aginola and Joy Adunkaduk. Michael noticed she used Grace's maiden name, not his family name. I am granting full physical and legal custody to Mrs. Comfort Aidbimp, the judge continued. You, Mr. Babatunde, will have supervised visitation rights, 4 hours per month, to be exercised at Mrs. Aidbimp's discretion. You will pay child support in the amount of 200,000 naira per month per child, backdated to their birth. You will also pay all medical expenses related to their premature birth, a sum I calculate to be approximately 3 million naira. Michael's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. I'm not finished. You will also establish and fund education trust accounts for both children, with an initial deposit of 5 million naira each, to be overseen by an independent trustee. The house in Lekki, which was jointly owned with your late wife, will be sold and the proceeds divided equally, half to Mrs. Aidbimp for the twins' care, half to you. Any violation of these terms will result in the complete termination of your parental rights. Do you understand? Michael nodded numbly. The financial obligations would cripple him. He would have to sell assets, scale back his lifestyle dramatically. Stella would have been horrified, but then Stella was no longer his concern. And Mr. Babatunde, the judge added, her voice softening slightly, I suggest you spend your visitation time getting to know your daughters. Not for your sake, but for theirs. Every child deserves to know their father, even a flawed one. But you will have to earn their love and respect. The courts cannot mandate that, only you can, through your actions. The gavel fell, and it was over. 1 year later, on what would have been Grace's 29th birthday, Comfort brought the twins to Grace's grave in Ikoyi Cemetery. They were healthy now, chubby and giggling, their personalities already emerging. Grace was the quiet observer, always watching with wise eyes. Joy was the mischievous one, already trying to crawl and babble. Look, my darlings, Comfort said, settling the babies on a blanket near the headstone, which read, Grace Aduk Babatunde, beloved sister, devoted mother, healing hands, gentle heart. Your love lives on in your daughters. This is your mother, Comfort told them, though they were too young to understand. She was the best of us. And you, my sweet girls, you are her legacy. She placed fresh flowers on the grave, white lilies, Grace's favorite, and photographs of the twins at every stage of their first year. See how big they've gotten, she said to the stone. They're healthy, Grace. They're happy. I'm keeping my promise. A shadow fell across the grave, and Comfort looked up to see Michael standing there, hesitant, holding his own bouquet of flowers. I don't come to intrude, he said quietly. I wanted to. To say you're sorry? Comfort finished. To tell her you've changed? To ask forgiveness. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, Michael said, his voice breaking. I know that. But I needed to come. To tell her that her daughters are beautiful. That they're safe. That she didn't die for nothing. Comfort studied him. Over the past year, Michael had been consistent with his visitation, always on time, always engaged. He had attended parenting classes without being ordered to. He had downsized from his mansion to a modest apartment, using the money he saved to contribute extra to the twins' trust funds. Papa Olyamide reported that Michael had ended all contact with Stella and had become active in a church program for men struggling with fidelity. It might have been too little, too late. But it was something. You can visit them today, Comfort said finally. At the park. 2 hours. Michael's face lit up with surprised joy. Really? Without supervision? I'll be there watching, Comfort clarified. But at a distance. You've earned that much. But Michael. Her voice hardened. If you ever hurt those girls the way you hurt Grace, if you ever make them feel less than, if you ever choose your pride over their well-being, I will make sure you never see them again. Understand? I understand, Michael said solemnly. Thank you, Comfort. For everything. For being what I should have been. After he left, Comfort returned her attention to the grave. I don't know if you can hear me, Grace, she whispered. I don't know if you're watching from somewhere beyond. But if you are, know this, your daughters will never doubt that they were loved. They will grow up knowing their mother was a hero. They will grow up strong, educated, and proud. And I will make sure they carry your kindness into the world. A warm breeze stirred the flowers, and for just a moment, Comfort could have sworn she heard Grace's laugh, light, musical, full of the joy she'd always managed to find even in darkness. 5 years later, Grace and Joy Aduk started primary school. On their first day, dressed in crisp uniforms, they each carried a lunchbox that Comfort had carefully packed. Inside each lunchbox was a photograph, their mother young and smiling, her nurse's uniform crisp and white, her eyes full of hope and dreams. That's your mother, Comfort told them every morning. She loved you more than life itself. She fought for you. She saved you. And every day you make her proud. The girls would kiss the photograph before putting it back in their bags, a ritual that would continue through their school years, a connection to the mother they never got to know but whose love had shaped their entire existence. Michael came to their school events. He paid for their education, their extracurriculars, their dreams. But he was always on the periphery, allowed but not central. He had learned his place, and he accepted it with the humility of someone who knew they had squandered something precious. Mama Bio Dunn never met her granddaughters. She maintained her bitterness until her death 3 years later, never once admitting her role in the tragedy. Papa Olyamide became a doting grandfather figure, welcomed by Comfort because of his genuine remorse and consistent efforts to make amends. And the twins. They grew up knowing they were loved, wanted, and valued. They grew up with their mother's kindness, their aunt's strength, and their grandfather's humility. They grew up knowing that their mother's death had not been in vain, that it had sparked a conversation about how women are treated in relationships, about the importance of speaking up, about the deadly consequences of emotional abuse. Grace became a doctor, specializing in obstetrics, determined to save mothers the way she wished someone had saved hers. Joy became a lawyer, specializing in women's rights, fighting for women trapped in abusive situations like her mother had been. And every year on the anniversary of their mother's death, they visited her grave, bringing flowers and stories of their achievements, keeping the promise that her legacy would live on. Justice for Grace had come in many forms, legal, social, and generational. But the truest justice was this, that a woman who had been treated as worthless in life had, in death, become a catalyst for change, a symbol of strength, and through her daughters, a force for good in the world. Grace Aduk had not died in vain. Her love, her sacrifice, and her story would echo through generations, a reminder that every woman deserves dignity, respect, and protection. And that sometimes, even in the darkest moments, hope survives, in the form of 2 tiny girls who refuse to give up, just like their mother before them.